Hey everybody, welcome back. I initially had thought that I would do something fun for this video at the very beginning where we play a game show and it's all about buzzwords. But um, I don't have the editing skills for that. Anyway, what we're going over this week is responsive design. Now, this is a topic that if you follow web development, if you follow the industry, there are a numerous number of buzzwords that kind of go with this topic. But really, the idea is to make our websites and our various applications scale to whatever size of display that you have. So if your users are using mobile, or if they're using a desktop or five stacked displays on top of each other, your website is going to look just fine in all of them. It is definitely a lot more approachable now than it used to be. However, for the longest time, this was the largest bane of existence for the web developer. So what we're going to be basically doing in this set of slides is going over the different, kind of historical perspectives, just so you can get an appreciation of how far we actually have come in a relatively small amount of time. And I'll show you some demos kind of sprinkled throughout. And what this is going to end with is talking Bootstrap, and you're basically going to be taking all these lovely Rails applications you've been working on, um, and you're going to make them responsive. So these slides look a little different than my normal ones. I'm using Dr. Engelsma's slides for this one because honestly, I like how they're put together, kind of like the last time where I had you read through them. This time I'm actually going to talk through them because I love all the old screenshots he has in there, and you'll see as we go. Anyway, this is all about responsive web design, and if you've ever taken any of his classes, he tends to have a more mobile bent to them, so it's honestly perfect for responsive design. So this basically these topics, if you go the historical route, we start out with designing for one resolution. And then we start considering things like fluid and liquid layouts so that we can hopefully scale a little bit. And then we get into the more current type of environment. So what you see here in front of you, this is Yahoo in 1995. Yahoo, obviously not as trendy now to use as a search engine, but for the longest time it was a market leader for search, for mail, for a web portal for a lot of people. And this is what it looks like, styleless. So we have nothing applied. It's basically just a set of raw text links that are not very aesthetically pleasing unless you're really into the whole minimalism thing, which, I am. I would be perfectly happy if my website looked like this. But this is what it looked like in the mid 90s. Does this scale well to multiple displays? Probably not terrible. It's just a list of links, right? And we would just control how it looks with text size. But again, no style here. Here we have a view of Craigslist. So if you're familiar, it's the kind of person-to-person purchasing site for anything under the sun, really. But here we have, again, something that looks a little bit more towards an actual layout that we might have, right? See here on the side, we have a column. Obviously, there's some broken images in here, right? Because it's a archive.org post. But we have a column here. This is probably the header. We've got the section, their navigation section for all the different categories. Probably a main content area, and then a footer here. Now, depending on how they set this up, I didn't look at the raw HTML. This could have been a table, this could have been a frame set, just depends on how they programmed it, but not very aesthetically pleasing and definitely not scalable. So if you were to go and try to resize this thing, it would honestly be pretty rough in terms of where things are placed. My guess would be if you managed to shrink it all the way down, you'd start seeing sections kind of overlapping on each other because it just doesn't know how to handle that. So let's talk about some of our early attempts at styling. And this, for your benefit and your perspective, mid to late 90s through the 2000s were where I did a lot of web development, web programming. So image maps, frame sets, tables, these are all part of my sordid history. I'm not proud of how I used to program websites, but that's what we did at the time. So one of the kind of the first things that really comes into play, other than standard basic layouts, was this idea of an image map. So I'm going to guess that unless if you've been using the internet for a while, you might not know what this is. And I find it a like a vestigial leftover of a bygone era in a way. This is probably one of the worst and most annoying ways to have to program navigation in a website. If any of you have ever done an image map, I feel sorry for you because it is painful. I know I've done them. It's not pleasant. But what an image map is, let me pull up a demo here that I've got for you. So I've got this. So this is just going to be a list of random demos, and I'll put the code in Blackboard for all of you. If you're coming at this from YouTube, sorry you don't have access to Blackboard. If there's a burning desire for these, I'll make a gist of them. But basically, I'm just grabbing random W3 schools and blog examples for these. So I've got an image map example for you here, and this comes right from W3 schools. So we've got an image, all right, and we've got a whole bunch of things that we can click on in here. And this was navigation 0.1. Okay, I want to get a feel for what this computer does. And you can kind of see my cursor changes to a hand, right? So over here it's an arrow, here it's a hand. Basically what's going on is we've defined this particular region as something clickable. And I click this takes me to the computer page. If you go to the W3 schools sources, so here is I've got the link in the description here. It's basically this example here. You click on it, takes you to a computer website. I didn't want to program the computer website just, so I just made kind of a fake little page for this. But what this looks like is, let's go into our www.html. And, I've been watching some of you struggle or not struggle with Vim. Today I'm going to use Nano a little bit just to show you a different perspective. So Nano, this one is image map demo. And no command keys. I just use this kind of like notepad. I don't need to enter any command keys. Control X will exit. Control O will save. I don't know how to cut and paste easily, so I'm not going to do that. But basically what we've got going on here is this set of lines. So here we're defining an image, and we're saying use map, work map, and then here is the mapping. And what this is doing is we're defining an area for each region we want to click on. So here are the pixel coordinates for this rectangle that defines the computer. Here are the coordinates for a rectangle that defines the phone. And oh, by the way, we can define circle, we can define multiple polygon types in here, but basically what this comes back to is pixel coordinates, which would basically mean opening this image up in Paint, figuring out, okay, where's the X, where's the Y of this picture? This is my first vertex, this is my second vertex. All right. Hopefully you can kind of appreciate that this is pretty terrible from a usability perspective, from an accessibility perspective, from a responsiveness and scaling perspective, right? If I make this image bigger, right, so it's going to nicely scale up with me, but if I wanted this image to be larger and I had like multiple sizes of images because maybe the high res version is really big, but it takes a long time for mobile users to download, I would have to define image regions for every single one of those based on what I was rendering. Big, massive pain in the behinds, right? So this is not necessarily something that we want to handle. Now, I only have ever really defined them from the client perspective. So what I showed you is the browser side. We could generate them from the server side as well if we needed to. But again, this relies on a lot of like pixel perfect positioning, which if you're, more of a current web developer, you realize pixel perfect is not really something that we tend to like. We work more in percentages and relative measures, things of that nature. So image maps are the first side of things. And if you go back to the GeoCity days, the old internet days, you would see these on a lot of different websites. What is the nice thing about this? Right? So you have something like this, and let's say that's a little bit prettier than what I have here, right? You have a picture that is scaled for the entire size of the window. You could think of like marketing materials or things like that where, okay, I want to buy this MacBook, so I'm going to click here. Oh, I want to get, information about what coffee we've got, or I want to get phone information from our shop. Kind of like those clickable advertisements you might get from your hardware store, your grocery store, where here's a interactive flyer type of thing, right? So aesthetically, it seems okay, but programmatically, it's just a horrible pain to do. So we've moved away from that as an industry. Used to be used quite a bit, though. All right. Other things. They're painful, um, annoying to design. They could take a while to load because you might need large images. You might need a lot of images, right? We are not always browsing the internet in a Ethernet capacity or a 4 to 5G. We might be out somewhere remote where we only have 2 to 3G connectivity. Images load slower. Maybe you're out of data and you're on a slower band. There's a lot of possibilities, right? Images take a long time to load, especially if they're big images. And again, think of the time. This is 1995. Dial-up was something you had if you were lucky at this point in time. So cable was not really as widespread. Okay, so we have image maps. We have basic tables, things of that nature. Other ways that we style things. Think the 2000s and the bane of the internet, Flash. Now, this wasn't Adobe Flash initially. It was Macromedia Flash. Also creators of the Dreamweaver software suite, which um, it existed, and we'll leave it at that. Things like Front Page and Dreamweaver, as somebody who used to have to use them and moved away from them, they generated a lot of garbage code, which was awful, I found. But anyway, Flash was one of those things where it was this interactive environment, right? And I'm sure you've all played Flash games or visited Flash websites where it kind of consumes the browser. It's this little interactive application. There was a lot of really neat things you could do with Flash, right? There's animations, there's games, there's tons and tons and tons of things. Lots of different possibilities for interaction that never existed before this. However, it becomes this self-contained environment, and we completely break the ideals of HTTP. Everything is like consumed by Flash. There's no routing, there's no addressing. It's behind this application that you build with Flash, and then it's read in through a plugin. So it was problematic for that, and it also became problematic for security and for performance reasons. But it's one of those other things that we would do for styling. And again, it's not great for accessibility, and it's definitely not great for scaling. You would have to handle positioning and scaling with respect to whatever your drawing environment was. And what you'd often see is like little like boxes on your screen where, okay, this is the region that we're playing in, and that's what you get. If you're lucky, it made it full screen. Now, this slide is kind of funny for me. Again, I'm leaving these in for a particular reason to talk through them. But there was a point in time, and this is kind of, when these slides were made, it's the in-between time. Apple got rid of Flash from iOS, and this was several years back at this point in time. Hopefully, we are all aware now that Flash has been banished from the internet entirely. This is an interesting take because we kind of got rid of this thing which was hanging on, and it needed to go. With HTML5, we basically replicated everything that Flash offered. And honestly, this is a good thing. But basically, we had to kind of cut the cord at some point with Flash. We have replaced a lot of its points. We can do cool animations with JavaScript and CSS and canvas drawing. And a lot of these things just are a part of the browser now. What this does do, though, is it breaks websites that used to use Flash. So if you think of compatibility, things that used to exist no longer work because none of our browsers have the Flash plugin. If you want to play Flash games, view old Flash animations, you need to download I think it's the Flash projector to actually watch them. So, for good, better, for worse, it is gone now. And again, these sites, if you go to visit them, they're not going to work. All right, so go a little bit longer, 15 minutes now. Um, let's talk a little bit more of the history, and then the next video after, I'll show you some demos and things like that. So, HTML3 comes along. So this is, again, mid-90s. We're going to see there's the 90s era of development and styling. We get into the 2000s, we have a completely different perspective on styling. And now in the 2020s, you know, it's the more responsive and accessible styling. So tables are brought in for HTML3, and hopefully with last week's content, you all got the feeling that tables should never, ever, 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 ever be used for layout. They were, however, used for layout for the longest time. Again, this here, 1995, tables quickly subverted for page layout. And why is that? Well, they're very nice and easy to lay out content, right? If I want to have a column for my navigation and I want to have a main section for my content, and maybe a header and a footer, I could just whip this up in Excel and reflect that, as a web page, right? So if I've got, and I'm going to, so this is a demo for responsiveness that we'll see in the next video. And actually, the little preview, super responsive, it just kind of magically flips around, right? But if I were to design this as a table, okay, here's my table. My first row, I just merge all the columns, all right? Second row, third row, fourth row, fifth row, sixth row. Merge these all down. These are all separate TD cells. This is one where I've got, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, 1, 2, 3. Let's say 3 columns. Okay, here's column 1, here's column 2, here's column 3. I might merge these vertically. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've got a row span type of thing going on. This would be the call span. And here's my content area. I just center the text here, and it's beautiful, right? It's perfectly laid out. I could whip this up very quickly in an Excel or a Word or something like that and show everybody the site, nice and easy. Again, this breaks a lot of accessibility. It breaks a lot of usability standards. So we have this. We also bring in fonts, colors, background images. The web starts getting pretty. And, things start going in the right direction, but we aren't really, too keen on the whole accessibility, usability from a robot's perspective type of thing yet. But remember, the web is new at this point. All right. So here you have an example of a web page, and it's kind of like the one I showed you, right? Here is a header row, column 1, column 2, footer. These would be merged, single cells, just depends on what we want. And this is kind of your standard table layout. This dominates the web for a long time. Again, this is easy to conceptualize. And we might even do things like specify the width of the table. So here, this table is 500 pixels wide. I could also specify it in percentages if I want, right? I could say this one is 80% of my page width, and it would hopefully scale accordingly when I make the page bigger or smaller. When things start getting too small, right, we can't really reflect this properly, then things start kind of overlapping and doing weird behaviors. But at this point in time, this is one way to handle it. All right, and you see background colors here, different fonts, different font sizes, bold, not bold, right? We might be having inline styles. We might be making use of the font tags, the color tags, using the properties of the table to handle all this styling. CSS really doesn't become popular for a little while at this point. Yeah, mid-90s time period. Sorry about that. Okay, so here is a snippet of Amazon back when it was a bookseller. Back when you could get your textbooks from Amazon for like 10% of the actual cost, basically. Nice textbook for $20 instead of $200. But looks kind of like this. Here we have a pretty simple tabular layout, right? Here is maybe column 1, column 2, merge, 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 and then here we go. Primitive layout, but it got the job done. Here's Google from way back when, okay, 1999. We have the old style Google logo. Incredibly, the search is in beta, and we have simple tabular layout. What do we not see? We don't see fancy styles. We don't see a whole lot of crazy things going on. And if we were to go to Google, oops, wrong window here, sorry. If we go to Google now, I've got it in dark mode. It hasn't changed too much. We've got like a sticky footer down here. We've got some horizontal links up here. We've got this nice little circular, bubbly input box here, a few buttons. But really, if we look at it, the whole, sorry, I keep trying to flip back and forth for you. Google search, Google search. The main focus is still there. It's just, it's a lot more responsive and accessible is what we've got. So, key takeaway here is you got this last time, and I'm not going to sit here and rant for another 10 minutes at you about using tables for layout, but the key with why we're doing this, it's for accessibility, and it's for responsiveness, and it's for using technologies to read the content with the web and understand it. Tables are intended for tabular data. Screen readers are going to look at tables and probably try to read them in as some form of data rather than a layout. Bots are going to be scraping websites looking for nav fields, article fields, tables. It's going to start thinking, okay, we have to read this as data. This could break search engine optimization. It could do a whole lot of really bad things. And honestly, tables are not super maintainable either. Let me give you one more example here. One of the things that hopefully you're starting to see with our various Rails assignment is that we're breaking up our web pages into pieces, right? Here is view 1 over here. Here is view 2. Here's view 3. If you went through and did the PHP aspect of the homework as well, you're probably going to feel for including other pages inside each other. I'm going to define the header in this file. I'll define my main content area in this file. My footer's over here. Here's all my ads. Here's, I'm kind of doing the professor hand wavy thing. But once I start breaking pages apart, if I've got my layout as a singular table, it's going to be tricky to kind of bring this all back together. I can't just say this page is div content, and then that is a responsive box that just will float into place. I need to make sure that that goes into the right table cell. Otherwise, everything's going to be completely off. Now, is it possible? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to, say it's not, but it's a lot more difficult to work on bigger projects like this. So don't use tables, don't use tables, don't use tables if you can. Um, Also, the whole resizing thing is right out the window with tables. So, um, yeah. What I'll do now is I'm going to end this video, and the next one's going to be more demo related. But to just kind of leave off here, we are at HTML5 CSS3 today. Obviously, that will evolve and change over both of our lifetimes. But the current strategy is to use well-formed, semantically inclined layout objects for presentation. And that's what you had to do in one of your last assignments, right? I said, use a header, use a nav bar, use an aside, use a footer. These are all intended for very specific purposes. Can we use tables? Yeah, sure. It still is going to work, but it's not right. And then, yeah, CSS3 with a lot of the new tags, new attributes give us a lot of power over style. And the one thing that is kind of skipped over in these slides, but I want to kind of talk about really quickly. Actually, never mind. We'll talk about it next. All right. Bye, everybody.